if that's annoying, but wait, by using at everyone, you're about to mention 100 people. That is a lot. God, now I feel so self-conscious. Live now. He's live. Chester, how's it going? Huge stream. Owen promised big things. Huge things, I'd say. Alright, send. Get over it. Ooh. That is like a horrible feeling. Then a message to a lot of people. Probably annoying most of them. But how's it going? I'm live with another stream. What is... Oh, I've spoiled the giveaway through my intro camera. Is this live? Yeah, this is in focus. Post it there. Right, it's posted on the socials. It's actually happening. Right, so let a few people jump in, as seems to be the norm. Hey Peter, how are you? I'm basically going to be watching this analysis of my animation. Chester Sampson is a good egg, to be fair. So Beau Pratt was kind enough to analyze a couple of my shots on his stream, like a really in-depth, nice analysis, and I just thought it'd be interesting to watch with you guys and see what kind of notes he gives and observations he has, and if those things kind of match what I was thinking while I was animating it. I just thought that could be interesting. I've not really seen that before with animation. I guess they're just very humble, shy people who say thank you very much, and I guess I am too, but I don't know, trying to break out my comfort zone, you know, and react to this guy's analysis of my animation. So hopefully it'll be useful. Feel free to ask any questions or anything at all in the chat. Very much appreciated. Peter the Hero, Chester Sampson the Hero, sending Peter the Hero here. Any more heroes in chat? That was like really aggressive the way I said that then. Any more? All right. So I guess we can just get into it now and just watch what we have. I got to put headphones on because that would just be annoying to have two audios kind of playing at once. Full gamer streamer mode. Let's see what's going on then. So it's quite a long review, but we'll just watch it until we get bored, I guess, or we've learned all we need to learn. All right, let's get a nice little intro thing going on in here.
So let me share my desktop.
So this is the Prep Rose on Twitch. I'm sure most people in here have
taking a look at this
heard of them.
Here, I'll play it
I
through
think this
a
is
couple of
Beau
times,
Pratt,
and then
based
we'll
on the messages in the chat.
Now, the thing that I'm going to be focusing on at first is the cinematography. So as we're playing through this, pay attention to the camera and how they use the camera. So let's just play through this and see what we've got.
We're never going to make it on that train without them seeing us. We need a distraction.
Who has four thumbs and is great at distractions?
Fine, but dial it down. Something inconspicuous and discreet, like... And she's gone.
Great
The
shot.
sound design
good.
when she does the thumbs is so good.
That train without them seeing us. We need a distraction.
Who has four thumbs and is great at distractions?
Fine, but dial it down. Something inconspicuous and discreet, like... And she's gone.
Okay. There's so many good things about this shot. Oh, that's cool. The two knights in the staircase are the two directors. That's awesome.
They are indeed. There's Nick and Troy in the background doing that voice. Fun fact, behind the scenes, I don't think he's got the sword like he does in the previous shot in this scene. think I forgot to put that in. What's up, Alien Slug? Don't know if I'm allowed to say that as well. Maybe I'll cut that bit out. Yeah, Beau Pratt. To be honest, they look very similar, the Pratt brothers. So I'm not sure if both of them have done multiple Nimona analyses. But there's a few on their Twitch channel that you can check out. Good friend Ricky got his shot reviewed by them as well, so that's pretty cool. Maybe he can do a stream.
Are they also the ones, like, I'm assuming they're doing the voice. So is that also the ones like they're talking about the otter attack and the
So I haven't
what
got
kind
his
of
chat
otter
up
is
here,
it?
but there was obviously a question
Nice.
from
So is that Nick Bruno?
someone about the voices.
One of them?
Yeah, these are my shots,
'Cause-
Peter. It's literally these
Nice,
two
Nick.
shots.
I actually know Nick. He was
the
a
full thumbs
mentor
one.
at Animation Mentor, which is where I teach.
So I thought it'd be interesting
I
to
never
kind of
got to
react
really talk to him that much, but
with
I've had a
my
few chances
perspective on
to
the shots
talk to him a
and
little
see
bit.
if what
He
Beau
is
here is.
awesome
Sorry.
guy.
It's probably
Just
really annoying
absolute-
if I play both. Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of react to what Beau's saying in his analysis and then give my take on whether I was actually thinking that or just got really lucky, which is probably going to be the case, let's be honest.
People to take on Nimona as a director and like to make sure that it got done and all of that. I'm so glad that Nick was the one to do it. He did such a good job.
100%.
And Troy as well. Like the two of them together, man, what a good film.
They're so good.
So
I love Nick and Troy.
Before I get distracted again, let's take a look at the cinematography here. Now, the reason I want to point out the cinematography in this shot is because it's doing such a good job of telling a story. And this is one of those things that as an animation student, especially, you're going to be working on a lot of shots. You're going to be working on certain shots for your demo reel, for example, with a lot of camera cuts. At Animation Mentor, for example, in class 5, you're going to be animating a shot where you're going to...
Is the audio okay from Beau here? Can you hear it like kind of a similar level to me? If not, I can turn it up. Just let me know.
Have to have at least 3 cuts. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on the idea, but usually aiming for about 3 cuts, which is what we have here. Now, where do you put the camera? How do you make the camera interesting?
Too quiet.
One of the things that I tend to see quite a bit is...
The Chester's saying too quiet. Okay. I don't know. Adam's fighting Chester in the chat. All right, I'm just going to go with it. I've turned up my desktop audio, but I don't know if that makes a difference.
One character, and it cuts back to this camera over here
Turn it on, just
on the other character, then cuts back to the same camera, and then back, with no change and no reason for the cut. One of the big things with cinematography is that as you're putting in your cameras and thinking of your camera cuts, in most shots, there should be a reason why there's a camera cut. If you're just cutting for no reason without giving the audience new information, it's more often than not just going to feel messy or feel unneeded. So one of the things that I usually try to do within my own work and what I try to show students is try to have a cut for a reason, to tell the audience something that we didn't get before. And that's what we're getting here. The camera in this sequence here is doing such a beautiful job of telling a story. So
all very sophisticated. I'm not sure. I mean, we did think about it at the time. I'll go into that a bit, but we'll see what Beau has to say on it.
Simple. There's nothing simple in animation. Yeah. But if we kind of take a look at this here, you can see how Ballaster ends up right on that third line, right there. Nimona is sitting on the outer left third, right there. And then we have the guards sitting on the middle upper third, right here. So the guards are...
There you go, animation. So Nimona and Ballaster, pretty intentional, obviously. The guards, can't say I thought about them too much. That's just where they were. I guess layout thought about that and framed them as such. But yeah, it's very nice. And then I thought it'd be useful maybe to go into Maya here and just give one little tip, which is I actually use the field chart in Maya here to make sure that things are on thirds. So you'll see this. Oh, wow, that's a pretty good example actually, because this is bang on. His eyes are bang on the third. So if you go on the fours, because we have 12 and then 12, so we got 24, which means every 8 steps will be a third. So I look at the fours and try to place things on those fours. So you can see here, this 4 is meeting this 4, and we're pretty much bang on a third. So I guess it's not just doing it by eye. I do tend to use that with most of my shots to make sure that we're on the thirds.
Kind of taking up this space. And you could technically see that they're
Shout out Maya.
only the half here. But if you actually look at the reflections, their kind of overall composition is taking up that nice middle section right there.
That's so cool.
So we've got
just didn't even think of that at all, to be fair. Obviously, that's a lighting job and not me. But I love that by lighting them in a certain way and their reflection, it's then taking up more of the composition. That's amazing. So cool.
Right through here.
Damn, lighters.
Now, the other thing I really like about this is they are balancing the screen very nicely, where on this side with Ballister, he is filling up like this whole scene. Just look at the size of his silhouette. He's got the cloak, everything. It's filling that up. And then if we think of the guards here, right there, you can see that this side is just filled with characters and silhouette, whereas Nimona is much more open. It makes her feel much more free. Owenferny. Ooh, awesome. Okay, I'm going to copy that link. Aether J with the resource.
Hey, Camilo. Yeah, AJ, who sent me this actually, he linked to my Showreel, I guess, in the chat. So shout out, AJ. Thank you very much.
Yay. I'm so glad. I love getting to know who animated certain shots. It's so nice. Okay. So, we've got this really nice composition here. Nimona feels nice and free and open. She's not pressured in any way. Ballister is being closed in, and it's almost claustrophobic, just how tight he is in his composition. Everything is squeezing in on him. It's doing such a good job of reflecting their personality. So this is the first thing. When you're thinking of how do I place my camera, how can we place it in a way that helps to emphasize or tell something to the audience? So in this case, it's emphasizing their moods. She's carefree, nice and out in the open. He feels trapped. So very, very good job just with this composition here. But as we go through, we get even more.
We're never gonna make it on that train without them seeing us.
Let me turn up the volume here.
Who has 4 thumbs and is great at distractions.
His expression there is just priceless.
Inconspicuous and discreet.
Okay, so here, we don't get a cut. We get a camera move. But
I guess that isn't pause on Twitch. I was hoping Beau would mention about this, because I feel like I probably did my framing for this just so that Nimona is more on the third, and obviously she can't be much further over because then you kind of lose some of the arm silhouette of her thumb, but she's kind of as far over as she can be. So I probably did the framing for something like this as opposed to that very first initial framing, and then the framing of Nimona at the start was probably a little incidental, and not incidental, I mean it story-wise, I guess she's like imposing more into Ballister when she comes forward. But I just want to point out, I probably did the framing for this section here.
Expression there is just priceless. Okay, so here, we don't get a cut, we get a camera move. But the camera move is influenced by what's happening on the screen. It's not.
Layout did not animate this entire shot. Nearly though.
The character.
Nearly.
Of him trying to be small and inconspicuous, everything getting closer and closer to the character as he does so. We're essentially kind of going into, you can almost think of it like going into his mind. Really, he's showing this idea, and it's this really cool little thing. And if we can just do this, and we get a nice close up in there.
Yeah,
right
I
there.
mean,
It also helps to just emphasize his face. Now, what it's all
so in terms of like the progression of this shot, this thing was like kind of a thing that happened at the end of the production of this shot and something that directors kind of requested, and I think it was a super good idea. And then in terms of the camera, the zoom in was never there. I kind of added it in because the frame is so wide. It's not just 16:9, it's much wider than that. So you kind of needed to zoom in, otherwise you're just still going to see Nimona on the side, unless you're like framing over to then kind of have the side of Bannister. So he'd kind of be in here or over here, I guess. It would kind of be something like this kind of framing, which would just look a bit weird. Like you'd have this negative space here, which is kind of unnecessary. So the zoom in was kind of essential in order to get rid of Nimona, and she's only gone for a few frames really before that final. I mean, you can see as it. Let me grab this. You can kind of see as the shot goes on and as we zoom in that we're kind of like just about losing her before he then looks over and we have this moment.
also doing is
There's a very
cutting away from Nimona.
juggling
so
act.
We get that little bit of a shock later on the next cut. So it's serving multiple purposes right here. But once again, it's not just a random motion. It is telling a little bit of a story, going into his inner thoughts. If we were zooming out and he's like going, this really cool little thing is doing this, but the camera was to just zoom out, that would feel odd because we're not focused on what he's doing. We're just looking elsewhere. So it's helping us as the audience to focus on him.
What's up, Jim? Camilo, yeah, you gotta watch it. Thank you very much, Alien Slug King. Is that your real name? So did I animate her leaving or did you just whack her rig in the ground? Well, she doesn't even leave, I don't think, because we just move the camera over and then the next shot is a cut. It's a completely different shot. So she's like, her rig is just not even in the next scene. Animated her running down each and every stair. My first idea was to have a step back, so kind of do this 4 thumbs and then kind of do this sort of thing. So she steps back just because the camera was such a pain having to like move that over, and then there wasn't initially a zoom, like I said, so that was kind of difficult. But yeah.
Then from there we get the cut, and now we get this really wide shot that just shows how empty everything is. We don't even see the guards up top. The lighting is just dark and it just feels so lonely. Look how much space he takes up on screen. It's just like this quadrant right there. That's it. Everything else is empty. It's helping to show, where's Nimona? What happened? No one's listening to him. He's alone and no one cares. It's emphasizing these ideas. Now, when I'm saying all of these ideas, these are what I'm getting out of it. Is this the original intent of the layout and the storyboards? Maybe not, but it is still worth looking at because it's helping to make us feel something more about these shots. It is not just a back and forth, and that's it. So as you're thinking of your own shot.
What is pause on Twitch? Anyone? Yeah, I guess that was intentional, but probably not from me, probably just from layout. I tend to get very eagle-eyed and focused and not think of big picture stuff. I mean, I'm just the animator, so this is very much director and layouty stuff. There's a comment in Beau's chat here, actually, which is how much of these decisions were up to the animator here. And it was kind of a bit of a collaborative process. It's not always that the case. Sometimes you do all the layout yourself as well, but particularly in feature, you don't tend to do the layout so much. But this was one of the rare cases where I did get to animate the camera, which was cool, and I'm glad to see it getting some love. It's cool. Not that it was exactly my idea, but it's kind of the only thing I could do with with not moving Nimona backwards. It had to happen. It was fate.
Shots. As you're thinking of your camera positions, and this
Space
takes time
bar
because
for pause.
for the most of
It's
us,
not.
we are animators. We are not layout
See?
artists. We are not storyboard artists. We are not compositors. We don't think of these compositions usually. But something that can help is, what do you want the audience to feel? How can you put the camera in a position that makes the audience feel that a little bit more? If a character is supposed to be lonely, don't put the camera really close to them because that makes us feel close to the character. Instead, have that camera really far away from the character. Make it so you can see all that empty space around them. That makes them feel lonely. We can see that there's no one around. If they're supposed to feel claustrophobic, if they're supposed to like be really tense and just getting angrier and angrier, push that camera in, make it feel like the walls are closing in on them. That way when they burst out, we can have that feeling of tension build up in there.
100%.
And
I just want to nod along and stream Beau's analysis in the background because everything you're saying is super good. Very
there's
true.
so many different variations on all of that. Now, as an animator, how can we learn this stuff? How can we get better at this stuff?
What's up, Louis?
There's a few really good books on that. I would highly recommend checking out the 5 C's of Cinematography, and then the other one, I keep forgetting the name of it. It's a storyboarding book, which is...
I feel like I'm doing the same
Directing
thing.
the
I'm trying to
Story.
rack my brain to
It's my
find
favorite storyboarding book.
the book that I read on cinematography. It's just one that was recommended. To be honest, you could probably just read any book. They're going to say the same things. They're going to say about not breaking the fourth wall. They're going to say all the different kind of camera types, camera moves, over the shoulder shots, and 90-degree and whatever rules. Is it 90-degree? I don't know. 30-degree. Some kind of degrees, rules. Learn that stuff. Learn about focal lengths, and then just work in previs by accident and learn on the job. It's fine.
And I always forget it. Directing the Story by Francis Glebas.
That probably sounds like a good book.
I don't know why I forget
Directing
it.
the Story.
It's literally on my shelf back there.
So I think the only book I've really read on that was just a pure filmmaking book. I can't remember what it was called. It was a green book. I can probably find it and put a link in the chat for afterwards if you want to come back and find that, if you think it's helpful. But to be honest, probably just go for Beau's recommendation here. 69-degree rule, yes. I animated these last year, I think. It's been like a year-ish.
So
Distant memory now.
Yeah, I would highly recommend those 2 books, but also just do master studies. Look at your favorite films, or if you want to create a feeling of comedy, for example, look at how comedic shows move and place their cameras. If you want to do something emotional, look at an emotional scene from one of your favorite movies. If you want to know how to do a horror element, look at horror movies.
I just want to say, if I'm not saying anything, it's probably because I wholeheartedly agree with what Beau is saying, but I also don't want to keep cutting in and going, oh yeah, very true, I agree. Definitely, yeah, what Beau said. So I'm not just saying nothing because I don't have anything to say, I'm just silently agreeing with Beau. But
look at how
also
they
do what
use
you're
their
saying now, I
cameras
agree.
and pay attention to that. That's going to teach you a lot of how you can do similar things in your own shots. So in this shot, the first thing I wanted to point out is just that the camera here is doing such a wonderful job of telling this story, of enhancing this story. The animation is already like beautiful. It's just like absolutely gorgeous. But the the directions and the choices of the camera are helping to make those even better. One of the worst things that can happen, especially on your own shots as a animator, when you're doing your demo reel pieces or as a student, is putting so much effort and work into this beautiful animation and the camera essentially fighting you and
Yeah,
taking away from your
I
animation.
just did it again.
That always hurts because your animation could be this high, but the
100%.
camera could be.
It's like way less work to do the camera compared to the animation, and some people will just zoom the camera way out over here and then animate. It's like bring it up close. Sorry, Blair.
Enhance them with their animation, so move the character closer, further. Sometimes depending on the studio, the animator might have the ability to adjust the camera to help enhance what they have. Other studios, the animator never touches the camera and you just make your animation work to those cameras. So honestly, it depends on the studio. I know some studios where the animators had free range to just kind of do whatever they want with the camera, and others where it's like you do not touch the camera. It is locked off and that's it. You do what you do, and there you go.
Jim agrees in the chat. Dozy Jim, lead animator at McGuff. Anything he says in the chat is very true, probably. But Jim also only had old bad personal shots for about 10 minutes, and then he was instantly very good. So don't listen to what he says.
So yeah, beautiful camera work in this. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Now, in terms of the animation, this is the thing that we as animators will kind of be looking at more often, but the animation here is just absolutely gorgeous. What I really love about this is the little accents and details that the animator is putting into the scene. So we're going to focus on Nimona first here. And as we look at this, like even right there, we haven't even gotten that far into the shot yet. And we have this really nice movement here. And there's a note here. Let's see. We got some back and forth with layout on some shots to make them work because sometimes animation was not working with a camera. Nice. That's nice. It's always nice when there's that back and forth with all the departments and it's not just make it work, go. That's cool. Let's see. Yeah, man, that's really cool.
So I guess before he gets into the Nimona detaily stuff that he says he's gonna get on with, I want to mention that this shot, I think I started it way too over animated and definitely had to dial it down. So there's probably stuff in there that's like residual where I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice, and it's just like 5% of the original animation that I maybe suggested or did. Just because it's two characters, the other one needed to be so still and so quiet, and because it's a quiet shot as well, that's just like the need for that is even more. Like, could almost just not animate the characters for some of it, but obviously wanted to be all animation-y and spliney with it, so we'll see.
So just as a note here for anyone like going into the industry, we talk about giving feedback a lot and being able to communicate. This is one of the big reasons why, especially for all of you in Animation Mentor right now. Like in Animation Mentor, there's this thing about leaving feedback, giving notes, having communication with not only your mentor, but also your fellow students. Part of that is to practice exactly this, being able to give feedback to other departments. Now, it's not always feedback, it's requests, it's having that, like working with someone else to make a shot as good as it can be. But that is a very important skill. Don't work in a bubble. The more you can work with other animators, with other departments, it's just going to make your shots so much better. So much more interesting.
Thanks, Chester.
So,
have a good one.
taking a look at this here, like that first motion of Nimona, we have that little bit of a breath, but on top of that, we have just this nice little hand motion coming in through here, right through there. And what I really like is how it just has this nice little offset where even though all the fingers are kind of starting to move in together right here, see how all the fingers start to move right there on frame 20 here. As it closes in, we
See you,
get
Jim.
a little bit more
Thanks for
of
stopping
the
by.
pinky kind of closing in here as the index finger slows down. So when we're offsetting things, it's not always about like 1, 2, 3, 4, all happening different times. Sometimes it's things can start all moving together, especially like fingers that are somewhat connected, but we don't just have them move robotically all together.
Yeah.
The pinky and the other fingers can keep closing in as the index finger slows down. But then what I like about this is then that tightening of the fingers is having a sympathetic reaction. It's not just the fingers, done, that's it. As the fingers tighten up, we feel this motion in the wrist moving through here. Just creates that nice kind of flow. And then we get into the blink after that. So if we just kind of think of how our eyes are being led through the screen, we're starting down here, moving up here, and then go to her eyes right there. So if you just watch that
That's kind of cool. Yeah, let's watch.
motion, and then up with the brows there.
I guess that's probably an instinctual thing and not something I was thinking, oh, I'll guide that through the hand and through the wrist and then up to the eyes. But yeah, it's nice that Bo's pointing that out. And I guess I probably tweaked some things and offset some things to get that because I felt a certain way, but there's also the possibility that that's kind of accidental and just a nice accident. But I guess if I did the blink first and then did the hand, something would have felt off, and I probably just would have ended up moving the hand altogether or removing the hand altogether. And then what Bo's saying with the offset stuff, I feel like one of the most telltale signs of like bad animation is like just fully grabbing your things and just offsetting the hands. I tend to always do it like within the pose, so I'll do like a pose here and then a pose here, and then I'll do like a breakdown where you have this kind of thing. So then that will give you like the nice kind of open where things are a bit offset, but it won't necessarily be like that kind of everything. Because when you open your hands, you're not always kind of going and doing this just all the time. It's very rare that that's going to happen. It's just a very flamboyant and overacted gesture, I guess. So it's kind of like almost doing the offset within the spacing rather than actually offsetting keys in time.
It's just such a beautiful, appealing motion right in there.
Bo's being so nice.
And her eye
Thanks,
darts
Bo.
right there. So nice. We talked a lot about eye darts in the first stream here, so I'm not going to repeat all that stuff about eye darts again. But the eye darts in this film are just so well timed. Okay. Now, what I really like, so this is the area that I really want to talk about. So first off, that expression. Beautiful, beautiful expression. The way that the teeth are clearly showing that pressure on the lips. This is a tough pose to do a lot of the times. To really get the rig to feel like the teeth are pressing on the lip, but they are doing such a good job with this. And part of the thing that's helping with this is the fact that Nimona has very pronounced fangs. So we very clearly see silhouette-wise those nice sharp fangs kind of poking out, gives that nice feeling of pressure, and we feel that overlap of the teeth being in front of the lip there. Now as she goes through here, you get that nice motion of the mouth just opening, pressure right here. As it's pressing in, it's not just going up, it's going up and out. So we feel that nice pressure kind of pushing out through there.
Again, I really over animated this when I first did it. I think I had the teeth like kind of squashing up as well, and it's just very like just really feeling like a full face, lower face squash in that. But I was wrong and I kept the teeth completely still and just kind of did that with the upper lip, which helped a lot.
Gets that nice sympathetic
Hey,
motion
discount.
right through. Get some nice eye darts. And right here, you have this really nice anticipation. So we get a few small eye darts, and then that expression is so cute. You get right here this little bit of the eyelids coming down before coming up, and it's not just the top lids. So the top lids come down, but then as they start to open, we get both lids opening right there. You get the brow starting to push up on the outside edge, so it's not just globally moving up, it avoids that just kind of linear motion, and we're getting that interesting breakup right here. You get that nice pop of the eyes where we just get that nice big section of white over the eyes right there, and that nice ease in right through there. Now, as that happens, the eyes are leading,
Yeah.
and then we get the body starting to push forward, and then the head comes up afterwards. So again, it's that successive breaking of motion where it's not everything starting at the exact same time, but instead getting that lead and follow, and it creates this nice organic motion right through here.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb for animating faces is to just animate the actual face itself before any body motion. It's kind of like a good way of anticipating that, or I guess not anticipating, but it's like reaction happens before action, you know? So you'll think and then reaction and then go and dart and do something. So I always tend to do emotion changes when the body isn't moving if possible, or at least is like in the previous pose before the one that then goes after that emotion change or whatever. So that's pretty cool. And I guess another thing with the eyelids, I just like anticipating that. I feel like doing an anticipation before a big moment, and especially here because if we were still meant to be looking at Ballister at this moment and we dart over to Nimona because she has this big expression change, then I wouldn't have done the anticipation. But because I wanted that moment to be big and for that to be the moment where our eyes go from Ballister to Nimona and we're now looking at Nimona, I think you had to have the anticipation in there just to create that contrast and really pop and then send our eyes over. Probably. I mean, I don't really remember.
Nice arc on the nose. So if we look at the nose here, it goes up and out, and then as it comes up to the top, we get that nice little arc right through there. And my pen is a little laggy there. So get that nice arc coming down right through. Now, as we go through here, once again, just look at that nice mouth pose. Really getting that nice line of the gums right through there. Which is a very nice Nimona pose. If you look at the characters, she's just oftentimes she has that, for lack of a term, very sharky mouth pose, which is just super appealing. Now, as she comes through here, this is something I talked about during the last Nimona analysis, which is as you're thinking of your faces, breaking them down to like squash and stretch can be super helpful in making appealing dynamic changes. So, for example, here, you could take this, almost think of it like a stretch pose. The brows are up, the eyes are open. As she's coming down here to anticipate for the next motion, the brows come down, the eyes close, the mouth is tightening up right there. Everything is kind of compressing. We're getting that squash pose in the face. And then you get this. Look at that. Just big, nice stretch pose right there. Look at the contrast in those eyes and how fast they move. So from the most squash, that's here 176, the eyes in one frame pop open right there. So we get the white above the eye. And then we just get a little bit of an ease right in there. And they just hold beautifully. right in there. You get this really nice big open mouth pose. Look how wide this smile is. They're exaggerating it so much and so beautifully. And then you get back down here into more of a squash pose. So if you look at those eyes, everything is squashing. The lower lid, the brows,
The
the
squash and
lid,
stretch, innit?
and even here, like look
Contrast.
at how tight they're pushing that mouth right in there. Beautiful. So really pushing that fleshiness of the whole face. One of the biggest.
I think the contrast in there again was important because we've just had our attention drawn over to Nimona, and it's like, okay, time to keep our attention and keep that contrast and keep the go from quiet to loud and Nimona-y and just contrast good in the right moments.
Things that I'll see with student work is that especially eyes and brows, they'll go up and down a little bit, but they kind of just stick to a almost neutral position. Don't be afraid of really exaggerating those, letting the push and just be dynamic right through there. Same.
And I think that's because our brows naturally are quite kind of neutral and not very expressive. But when you look at great animated characters, they'll come like their eyebrows might be way down here on their face and then go all the way up to like right where their hairline is. And it's just very important to, especially with stylized characters, generally to push those brows to the extreme.
Thing with the mouth, like look how small it's getting here, and then how wide it's getting right through here. Don't be afraid of pushing those in and out. Now, with that said, when you're looking at the mouth corner, one thing that the animator is doing a beautiful job here is that they're not bouncing the mouth corners or the eyes. It's not just open, close, open, close, open, close, or in, out, in, out, in, out. It's building up beautifully. And as she's holding this last pose here, let's listen to the dialogue.
Four thumbs and is great at distractions.
Like, great at distractions. We could exaggerate that lip sync and go great with distractions and have big mouth shapes right in there. Big changes. But if you look at that,
is great at distractions.
Great at distractions.
Fine.
Great at distractions.
Dial it
The
down,
corners
something.
just stay out because she's smiling.
Great at distractions.
And we just get this like dir. This is the R shape right there. So R is you usually pinch the corners.
I probably so wanted to push those
And
in
then you get
to
a
make an
nice
U
little
shape,
jump,
but
distractions.
had to be a
Just
smile.
adds such a nice little bit of keep alive. And the mouth corner itself also has this nice little arc that goes through there.
At distractions.
But they're leaving her in this nice, beautiful smile, which it's so toothy. It feels like they scaled up the teeth to make them a little taller, which just works so well with this pose. Like if you just look at the height of the teeth here, compared to the height of the teeth here, it feels like they're a little taller, but it does such a good job of making that smile just feel so appealing.
I think because of Nimona in the Nimona world as well, where she can kind of adjust her body, and you have the like the metal, you know, that scene where she's like metal, and she does the crazy teeth. You could kind of do what you wanted, especially for that one. She's meant to be doing a crazy pose. I mean, she's just got 4 thumbs. You can believe that her teeth have grown. So I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, you could do that if you really wanted to push something to the extreme, but I wouldn't do that for most characters, I guess, or for most moments. I guess for this moment, it's kind of, it works and it can be applied. But yeah, I guess just on the lip sync, I think on this show, I really learned a lot about lip sync because I was always very over articulating, and in TV animation, you're kind of pressing mouth shape and then, hey, I've done my animation in like 5 minutes. But on this, it's very, and in feature in general, it's very much like try and work through the lip sync by using like as few poses as possible. And this show just taught me a lot about that, I think. Lip sync is hard, but you think it's easy when you get it. Then you're like, oh, lip sync's not so hard. And then you just get schooled, and then you're like, oh, lip sync is hard. And then you think you get it again. I probably think I've got it again. And I'm gonna get schooled again. The cycle and
So
lip sync.
the other thing I'm really liking about this, and is just such an appealing design about the character, is how the animator is constantly doing such a good job of showing the silhouette of the teeth. So, for example, here you get those nice fangs right in there. You get that. There's a little bit of a kind of rounded shape to the middle of the teeth here. And it's showing even here, like as the mouth is closing, you see that little bit of a gap right through there. And it just makes it so that those teeth have such a nice visual appeal in this whole section. And this is something that for most rigs, as long as your rigs have individual teeth, you can actually adjust on your rigs, like exaggerate the fangs, exaggerate the teeth. Don't be afraid of pushing that silhouette. It can make such a big difference in your characters, especially when you have two characters in the scene. Instead of just having both of them with just perfectly flat teeth, it makes such a cool.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I always
Contrast
just thought
right
about
there.
the design of Nimona. Oh, she has big canines, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I guess pushing that would be nice for some shots, especially when you want to have like a really biting action. To push those fangs would be very cool. Alien Slug King is saying, "How long did it take you to animate this scene?" I thought I was done at one point, and I was like, right, I'll finish this off, come back, and just like do a few little tweaks when I'm back from holiday. And then kind of submitted it the day before going away for a week or two, maybe just a week, and then it didn't go so well. So I think in total this is probably a minimum like a couple of months I was working on this. This was very, very long. But when you go through from my first blocking pass to the finished thing, and I'd love to upload that someday if I'm allowed, but I mean, I can talk about it probably, but I'm not sure that's going to be allowed to be uploaded. Don't know. But if you look at that compared to my final animation, it's totally different. This is way more contained and reserved. And the change, all those changes and all those notes I got and all those going, oh, I thought I was done with the shot, were so worth it and just made it way better and much more in fitting in the scene and for the director's vision. So worth it all the time, all the hours spent.
Now, from there, let's take a look at some of the little details that they're doing so beautifully here. So one is the way she does the eyebrow wiggle right here. So when she's smiling right here, you have the eyebrows starting to lead right there, and you're getting that nice fleshiness as they come down, they're pushing the eyelids down a little bit after. So brows lead, then comes down. Then as the brows come up right here, it drags the eyelids back up, and we get that kind of offset right here. So if you just look at that kind of wave that's creating between the brows and the eyelids, it's not just both of them moving together, but you're getting that kind of lead and follow right there. It's very subtle, as subtle as she can be right
Yeah,
here.
I was going to say it's not that subtle. I think it's probably a little bit overacted, if anything, but I think that works for the moment because she is literally overacting. She's going and doing the like she has gone into the most extreme pose possible. So then, kind of all that can move is just something within that pose. Like she needs to do a little like she's there and then she can't go anywhere else. She just kind of needs to expel that extra energy that she's got through another kind of motion. So she's like, and then just moving the eyebrows. Um,
Here.
yeah,
But it creates
overacting
such a
on
nice keep alive in
purpose.
that whole eye mask region. And then when you layer in the eye darts on top of that, it's just such a nice little detail. And what I also like is that the timing of those eyebrow wiggles is ever so slightly offset. So it's not just like 4 frames up, 4 frames down, 4 frames up, 4 frames down, repeat. It changes every little bit. So you get like a little bit more of a pause right here where those brows hold, and then kind of a couple of fast wiggles right after.
Yeah, I really experimented with that a lot, and I didn't have a real formula for it. I was just kind of like messing with things, and really, I guess that was like the polishy part of the animation where I'm like, okay, it just needs to like have a little hold here and not just like up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Because I think I initially did that, and I was like, whoa, that just looks terrible. So it kind of needed to have a little more difference in spacing. Because I guess when you do it and you're in that kind of thing, you're kind of like you're not just fully doing a cycle up, down, up, down, up, down. So that was definitely something I was just playing with and then play blasting and just kind of waiting until it appeared in front of me on screen, which probably isn't the right thing to say. It's not usually how I like to go about things, but when you're kind of in that polishy phase and you're just kind of searching for something, and I guess when it's just on a small thing like the eyebrows, then you can kind of get away with doing some play blasting. But generally, you don't do that. What's up, Aaron? Animate with Aaron is here. Yeah, like I said, I would love to show that if possible, Camila, but we'll see. Damn months, what is better in a studio for animation speed or quality? I mean, it's just purely because it was a tough shot. I wouldn't say every shot I did was months, and it's actually the longest shot I've ever spent on a shot. But it is 15 seconds long, so cut me some slack. But it was more the fact that there was just such big changes at times. And not changes because, oh, it's the director changing their mind, but just because I was kind of searching for exactly what the directors wanted and eventually got there. Just takes some time. I remember interviewing for a feature place, and I was like, I've worked in TV, so I can get stuff out pretty fast. And they were like, we don't care about speed. We just want quality. We don't care about speed. So I don't know if that answers your question. Possibly. Maybe Aaron can speak to that a bit. Did they give you the video of the dialogue recording? If yes, was it helpful in the shot? I didn't get it. I didn't get the recording. I might have been able to ask for it. I'm not sure we did a lot of that on Nimona, to be honest. So
just feels really good. And then let's see. And
I also don't tend to, even if I do have it, to use it very much. Maybe some people do.
That's just really cool. And this is one of those wonderful things where like anyone could do this. And when I say that, like in the sense that whenever you're animating your shots, even if it's like on a student project, if you're doing a shot with just any old rig, you have 2 copies of the same rig, put them one inside the other, hide certain body parts, and hey, you've got the double thumbs right in there. There's
giving
no,
away
like,
the secrets.
special script or tool that needs to be used, and it's only something that a big studio could do. This is literally something that anyone can do, and it was done, and it was done beautifully, and it's just so cool, and they're so wiggly.
Yeah, it was literally
It's just so creepy.
Ah, man, that's another thing I wish I could share. The Nimona that's hidden inside of the main Nimona. There's just a Nimona doing exactly the same motion with just a tiny scaled down head and body and just the same size hands. And then all the fingers like kind of pushed inside, so you only kind of see the thumb and this kind of fleshy bit of the base of the thumb. So it's like normal size hands, and then everything else is just like tiny and like a stick man. It's very funny. Yeah, that would be fun to share one day. Let me know, Netflix. Netflix, if you're watching.
Look at that one right there.
Let me know. I'll share it.
All wobbly. So good.
Fine, but dial it down. Something. Fine.
The sound design also helps a lot with that.
That was something they added after the sound design. Very funny.
Good.
Fine, but dial it down.
And what I also love about this, and this is something that, again, I see a lot of students struggle with. So if you're struggling with this, I highly recommend just doing a master study of this. look how still you can keep a character. Nimona feels alive here. You have those brows, you have that mouth, you have those thumbs just going crazy here. But look how still she holds. So right around here, about 238-ish, her body hits a hold. She's just doing this pose, holding it there. Look how still that pose stays. All the way till she's off screen, which is here at like 354. So for about 20 something frames, or no, longer than that, 354. So over 100 frames of the character sitting still, and we get eyebrows and thumbs and a little bit of sympathetic motion in those arms. Just like right here, you get a little bit of motion. Aside from that, it's holding. And that's okay, because our focus is right here and here. We don't need to have a ton of character wiggling in those areas. And it just makes the little motion of the thumbs and the brows stand out so well right through.
Yeah, Beau is absolutely nailing that assessment, that analysis. I learned so much about clarity on this show and keeping things still. And it's something I'll take forward for the rest of my animation career for sure. But don't be afraid to keep things like very still. Especially for clarity, like here, we're looking at the thumbs. You want everything still pretty much. You just want enough life in there to believe it, and that's the delicate thing, because if she was completely still and nothing was moving, then it wouldn't look so good, I guess. But it's just moving it just enough to keep alive, but then everything else, the important things, moving a lot more. Clarity, very, very important.
Here.
Fine, but dial it down. Something.
Those thumbs. And also, just look at the great hand poses. In general, when you're looking at hand poses, something that can help quite a bit is just looking at the arcs of the knuckles through here. So if we look at the knuckles, what we usually want to do is avoid flat lines right here. So for example, if this was just a flat line there and then a flat line here and a flat line here and they're all parallel, that would be very boring. Instead, if we look at this, look at how dynamic this curve is compared to the curve over here, compared to the curve there. And if you can get those nice dynamic curves through here, it just makes your hand poses so much stronger and more appealing. So you see how none of them are parallel. Even if like this one here was just this and this, that would kind of feel boring if these two curves were just flat. Instead, all the curves are being exaggerated and pushed, and it just makes this still hand pose where it's just holding like this and the thumbs are moving interesting and dynamic. Such a
Yeah,
good
when you're holding long poses, like you said, this one doesn't really move for 100 frames. Spend your time on your poses. Spend time on the hands. I can't claim to have been thinking that much about, oh, make sure my knuckles aren't parallel or something, but I guess that's just an instinctual thing that you pick up when you're posing. But really cool to see that kind of spoken about here. Something I'll definitely keep in mind.
detail right there. So good. I love her smile. The way the corners here are pinched so far, and how you get that little bit of an overlap right here in the mouth corner adds such a nice level of depth right in there. Okay, so
I think they were just generally
that's
dilated.
awesome
I guess that makes them feel more
so good.
black,
Even this, there's this little
which is
head tilt
more 2D
right here that
era.
follows the eyes. So the eyes lead and then it tilts the head. Such a nice little detail. Now, looking at Ballister here, because he's got a whole other level of amazing animation just in here. We get
Those
such
two
a nice
CAD.
variety of subtle stuff right in here. So first off, just the way he turns, I love how simple this is. This is one of those areas where you could have gone even further, where you break up that motion, lead with the shoulders, then the head, all of those motions. But comedy-wise, it's just so much nicer to see the character turn, and it's just like this really stiff motion. It really makes him feel nervous in there. So,
And I tried fast and I tried much slower, and it was kind of just a lot of back and forth. I had some back and forth with my leads as well on what we should really do for that. And I guess in the end, I kind of just I did a few versions of it, and we landed on this. So got there in the end, like most of the shot.
does that motion feel a little stiff? Yes, in terms of like especially Nimona's very organic motions. But that's the point. And this is one of those things again as a student where we learn how to break up motion. We learn how to lead and follow, and I've talked about that a lot already on this stream today. But it doesn't mean that we have to follow that all the time. If we want a character to feel more stiff and still and kind of scared and nervous, you would tone down the amount of overlap, because the more overlap you get, the more relaxed a character becomes.
Definitely.
Or more loose.
Doing that thing where I just
So
nod and agree.
this motion here,
I agree.
just
What can I
works
say?
really, really well with the character and their emotional state right here. So that should always be a priority in any shot, is thinking of what the character is feeling and how can we enhance that through the motion or the type of motion. Now, as that's happening, when we still get the nice eye darts right through there, look at that nice eye dart. Right there. And you see how much detail they're putting in with the lids, how the eyelids are actually forming and shaping a little bit.
I think I put a little
those
squash and
eyes.
stretch in that on as
Eyes
well.
aren't just darting in
See
kind
that?
of a vacuum.
See
You
that
get this
eye kind of
connection right there.
pupil
not
kind of
one-to-one.
squashes as it goes over. It's
And
kind
that's
of a fun
an
thing to do.
important thing, which is something I see a lot of students struggle with, is how much to move the eyes.
We're never gonna make it on that plane without
Since we're talking about eyes, let me just point out something else here, which is I love her expressions. When he's looking over to the side,
Fine, but dial it down. Something
let's see, where's a good
inconspicuous and
point?
discreet, like
Yeah, so right here. So if we look at the shape of the eyes, one of the things that I see a lot of students do in their work is either not move the eyes at all, or I should say the eyelids as the eyes move. So let's say you have a character looking off to the side here, same as he's doing there, and you've got your eye shape, and the eye is going to look over to this side, but the eyelid has no reaction. The peak of the eye is still over to screen right in this case, and the eyeball just kind of moves underneath and essentially buries itself into the eyelid. That doesn't feel very natural. It also makes it feel disconnected from the eyes. The problem, though, is that you can go too far the other way. And now, to be fair, if you're going for a very cartoony shot, this could work. But for most shots, this tends to feel a little weird, where the eye is going to just shape itself completely to look in the direction that the character is going. So,
I love these.
For example, you're going to get something like this. So this is the inner tear duct right there, and the eye is kind of looking right through here. So now the entire force and direction of the eye is following where it's going right there. And this can work a little bit better, but the problem with this is now it makes the eye feel like it doesn't have form, because the entire eyelid is just kind of morphing and changing the whole way through. By default, our eyes tend to, and this depends on the person, but for most people, the weight of the eye, where your peak of your eye is, tends to be towards the center, especially for the top lid. So if we push it too far out to the side, what we end up getting is an eye that almost collapses in on itself. And you'll sometimes get students who do this, where that top lid has just totally collapsed on that inner side right here. That would be this side right there. Instead, there's a balance in here. And they're doing this beautifully right there, where if you look at the peak of the eye, let's just kind of look at the contrast here. So you have the eye right here. The peak of the upper eye is right there. Peak of the lower eye is right here. So this is where the line is the lowest or the highest. And you get a nice little diagonal, which is always good. Getting a diagonal in there is just make the eyes look more appealing. But then as the character is looking over, it's not doing, I'm going to exaggerate this here, this, where it's just totally pushed over on that side. The peak is still towards the inner side there. It's just rounding out over here. Right there. So we're still getting the peak around that point. And the lower lid, it's more about there.
I think in general, some people who don't push their animation very much don't open the eyelids enough, especially those upper ones. Generally, when we're animating, the character is going to have some kind of intensity, and if your character's eyelids are kind of like default and looking like a natural person, they're just not going to have any intensity to them. So I guess if you look at like this kind of baluster stuff through, like, see if I can find something. So you see here, for example, like his brows are very much down, and you might think, oh, I need to match that with the eyelids. But if I just had the eyelids kind of down here and kind of doing a similar thing, he just kind of feels sleepy and kind of unappealing. So something I like to do is kind of do this thing where you open the eyes. I'm not sure. Oh, Keyframe has this thing where if you zoom in, it just lags like crazy. Like overlap the brow with the eye, feeling super nice, just so it feels like it's kind of open underneath that brow. Super good thing just to make a character feel more intense, and because it's animation, it's usually kind of an intense moment a lot of the time for the characters.
What it's doing is it's keeping the physicality of the eye in place, which is something that, again, can be very easy to lose if you're not paying attention to it. So we don't want this kind of collapsed eye right in here where it's just kind of shifted over completely. Not all the time. Most of the time, shapes like this are much more appealing. And as you can see here, it's just super appealing on this character. So even here with Nimona, if you look at her eye here, it's not shaped like this, where that peak is like right at this edge here, like that. The peak of the eye is still kind of over there, pushing through.
And this was, again, something I had a lot of back and forth
on. It's really just looking at how you're shaping those.
I didn't nail this first time on the eyes. It's something I definitely had back and forth on and draw overs and notes, and got to that final stage of eyes.
As he's talking here, we're getting some really nice.
It's like a very kind of difficult balancing act to get that kind of feeling the peak on the inside, but also feeling the direction of the eye, like Beau's talking about here. It's a bit of a balancing act at times.
Accents throughout the dialogue. So right here, we're never. He has a nice little head motion on never. Never gonna make it. And then seeing us, he collapses down on the us. Accents are very important. I talked about this quite a bit in one of the last classes that I was teaching, where some of the shots that I was looking at, you had this really nice line of dialogue and the beautiful acting, but the character, as they were talking, they weren't hitting the accents. They weren't hitting the dialogue quite right. So, for example, here, like we never, he's hitting on never. As his voice is saying neh and getting that real nice ever, we get that nice accent in there. And by hitting them together, it connects what he's doing to what he's saying. He feels like he's actually saying that line. Whereas if you were to offset that, and he would have something, we're never.
Sit down.
And then he does the motion, or never gonna, so move, we're never gonna hit that. If you don't line those up correctly, it'll look like the character is just mouthing the line and not actually living and breathing the line, if that makes sense. So,
which was very difficult in this shot, because this is something where they want Pallister to be very still and very subdued. So getting the balance right of not overdoing those gestures and accents was quite difficult. But you know, like everything in this shot, it's just kind of a balancing act, trying to tune things to get to a certain point, and it was a
Listening to
tough
your
shot.
dialogue is very important, and making sure you time your accents correctly will really make the character feel like they're actually saying the line. Now, you don't want to hit every single accent, because if you do that, yeah, exactly, it's part of the delivery. And you can try this yourself. If you try to speak and like really emphasize your words and try not to move, and as you watch me talk, I emphasize everything. I move my hands, I move my head. It's maybe a little overacted in a way. I have to tone it down in my animations. But naturally, we hit those accents. We move when we emphasize words. We emphasize, essentially. And they're doing such a good job with this. Like, even here, like, we need a distraction. As he's saying that line, that's when the eyes open up right here. And even here, distraction. And it even here, like, who has pops up. What a great pose, by the way. Look at that, just straight right in there. It's adorable. Oh,
C-shape in the spine at play.
So, acting choices beautifully done right through here. The delivery is just.
If you want to learn more about C-shape in the spine, which is very important, it's one of my two secrets for body mechanics animation. You can check out the video that's on my channel. Might be of help to you. Might be of interest. See what you think.
Fantastic. Now, what I really love about his acting in here is his reactions to her. And this is just like, this whole thing right here, beautiful. And yes, cold and wet VFX, those eye darts right there, after he says distraction, you can see him thinking there. He's not just hitting and then holding and waiting. And he's also not, we need a distraction, looks at her right away. They gave enough time here for him to finish his line and then just have those eye darts, and you feel that thought. You see him like going through the calculations or the different ideas. And this is what, let's see here. So he finishes the line.
Yeah, so it's all about going from his own internal, we need a distraction, and then thinking, wait. Oh yeah, Nimona's here. What's she got to say?
We'll say around
internal to external.
164, and he starts to look in her direction here at 183. So we'll say 164 to 182. That's 18 frames right there of him just sitting there and holding and thinking. That's beautiful. That is such a good detail because it really makes him feel alive. Now, he reacts to her right here, and honestly, there's just so much to talk about here. So what I really love with his expression here is, one, you've got that, again, compression, squash and stretch. He's kind of in his own mind. He's already kind of brows down, mouth kind of up. You can see here, like, the sneer muscles are being activated. So he's going to already got this tight expression right in here. And then he looks at her, and you can tell just by the way he narrows his eyes. He knows that whatever she says is not something that he's going to like. But you get that nice eye dart, and that pulls the eyelids up here. Then you get the squint, and then you get the mouth kind of flattening out here. So you get that kind of shape right there. And then it just kind of flattens out. Subtle, but it just adds so much character. And he just kind of stares at her with this like neutral expression. And then as soon as the thumbs come out, you see that little bit of like extra compression right here. So they're just pushing it.
What's she doing now?
Pushing it some more right in here. And then
it was hard because he's already kind of in this brows down shape. So getting contrast from that to the next shape, which needs to be brows down, and then the next shape, which needs to be brows down, and then the next shape, which needs to be brows down and mustache up. It's just, yeah, contrasting a pose which is already
this
contrasted.
Moment here is such a good little detail, and the way they level it up. So they could have just gone down, 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 and then hold the disgust. That's it. But if we frame through it, watch what's happening with the disgust. So he's in this pose here. They pushed, and then once again they push again. Now the eyelids squint even more, and that kind of like, ugh. You get the pull up of the mouth right there, that sneer, pushing everything, really compressing this side of his face right in here. And then from there it layers even more, where the jaw pushes up. We get the whole lower face squashing upwards here.
Animbot overshoot, innit?
It pushes even more, like they're just layering it. And the thing is, what I love about this layering is that they're stair-stepping it. So stair-stepping it is when you don't go from one pose and then just slide, 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 slide into the next pose. And technically you're continuing to compress it all the way. That gets very boring because visually we won't see the differences. Instead they're going hold, hold, push it, hold, push it, hold, push it, hold. So we register every change right in there. So we get that, like, again, right here. So compression, hold. So from 64, it holds to about 68, so about 4 frames before it pushes again, right there. And we compress down with the brows even more. Then it opens up, it compresses again. So once they reach the maximum compression, he essentially has to just kind of like, he opens his mouth and bites his lip here before compressing, which acts as the anticipation, and pops out. So this could have easily been a scene where...
Yeah, I'm going to rename this video, Aaron. Animbot reacts to Beau Pratt reacting to Nimona. It's basically Animbot that animated the shot, for sure. Luckily, we were able to use that on Nimona, and it was definitely used a lot. I kind of forget how much that was pushed through that section. Like the tiny little eye squints, I don't know. You've just got to try and push something as far as you can go, and then push it again, and then push it again, and then push it again. It's fun. That's the fun stuff in animation, right? Making something ridiculous. And when he was frame by frame in that, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, that's just, I don't know, I'm just enjoying that the eyes are so pencil thin, like 2 pixels thin, but they're still open, not closed. It's just as much squash in the face as possible. And disgust. Yeah,
it could have
it's
been
fun.
very
Animation's fun, right?
static. He just looks, reacts. It could have easily been a scene where it was...
DNEG got our Animbot licenses for us.
Where it's just compress, 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 compress,
Shout out,
compress,
DNEG.
compress, come out. But no, they made this subtle reaction build by having it compress, hold, compress, hold, compress, hold. And then before he explodes out, they had a little bit of like open, close, pop, open. So it doesn't just go dunk, 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 pop, dunk, 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 and then pop. And it adds this beautiful feeling of timing and rhythm to the whole thing. And it works with what he's reacting. Like we feel that suspicion, more suspicion, disgust, and then you could almost say like, just like this is like a mixture of just disgust and just like disbelief. He's trying to turn away from her before just popping in right there. It's just such a good shot. And when we watch it at speed,
well, I think some of it as well is to draw attention back to Ballister there, because while, yeah, sure, I'm doing some subtle stuff, you're not really meant to be looking at him in that moment and reading those subtle, you know, you're meant to feel it. And then as we want to get drawn back over to him before his big expression, we kind of want to anticipate that in a way by, you know, he's doing this big scrunched up and then can do a little... And just that moment alone maybe makes our eye dart back over there, and then you get that big payoff of the big reaction. So I guess it provides a lot of rhythm, but it also gets our attention back over there for the big payoff and the big look at Ballister again. It's his moment to talk. Moment.
Pay attention to the pause, hold, pause, hold, pause, hold, anticipation. So let me just play through that. Pause, hold, pause, hold, pause, hold, pause, hold. And you see how it speeds up right at the end?
Oh, sorry,
so
I was playing that.
You get that
1.25 speed, but we can watch it again here. And I'm not playing that back because Beau's slow or anything at streaming. It's more because I feel self-conscious when I'm just not saying anything and just watching a video on stream, basically. Just trying to get to the next talking point or something that I can add as quick as possible. So
like frustration almost building up through there. Such a nice detail. And as that's happening, you're still getting eye darts, all of that good stuff. We're really getting that F for fine. That he's really pushing that right in there. And look how fast things move. So we have the eyes at their squintiest level right here. They're just a tiny little sliver. They start to open up here, and then poof, in one frame, open. Where they hold a little bit, so they hold 1, 2, 3 frames, and then we get back into that kind of more, I wouldn't say relaxed expression, but not exaggerated, like big wide-eyed expression. We just get a nice pop in there.
Fine, but dial it down. Something inconspicuous.
And then I love afterwards, they still have a little bit of that indecision in there, where he doesn't just go, fine, but make it small. And like he doesn't just go 1, 2. Instead, they use that shift over to screen left. So fine. And then he
So Aaron, sorry, I just completely didn't say anything for a second there. I probably lost, I mean, there's probably 20,000 viewers, right? I probably just lost 10,000 viewers. Damn. Aaron says, what percentage of the anime idea were inspired by the ref, the pre-planned before ref, would you say? Inspired by the ref versus pre-planned before ref. So I would say I probably did thumbnails for this. In fact, do I have some in here? I don't think I do have Oh, maybe I do. Okay, these are thumbnails for the nights. You kind of see some rough notes and thumbnails and stuff in here for the nighty things. Their kind of poses. Where am I going? Over here. Should kind of make that full screen really. So, just you know, don't really want you reading my weird little notes, but I was just trying to kind of break down the beats and then do that. I'm not sure I actually filmed reference for them, but I just wanted to kind of do that quickly, really. Okay, so there's a few planning notes in here. I realize this isn't that interesting to watch, but here's some stuff. Thumbs. This is probably my very, very initial stuff. I'm not sure why I would have started with the guards though. I would say I probably did a pass of reference first because I had a lot of freedom, honestly, at the start of this shot. So I could kind of experiment. And there are just now pages of like notes and thumbnails and probably confidential stuff in here. So, but you know, there's a little like, kind of thumbnail of that and some eye notes and ideas, things that I've maybe discussed. You can see a little Ballister there doing his little, ooh, I must find this idea. That's pretty funny. And then, so a lot of it, I think I was doing this kind of pose. So where she's kind of like back like that. And then I think, you know, around this time, kind of got a little bit of, you can see how that head changes angle there to the other side. And then for that pose, you can kind of see here I'm doing some drawings of what that might be. I'm not the best drawer in the world, but I feel like here is kind of where I got the final pose. And I was like, that's, I think, what the pose is. Because before I was kind of on this idea, you see that kind of thing, and I was like, I don't like that much, and kind of changed it for that based on some notes I got from my leads and things. And wow, there are just pages and pages of notes on this shot. Ballister looking mad. Just more and more notes. Some notes on like lip sync here, you can see that. Oh, and then I've got here written approved. This must have been when I got it approved and final. So that is a good amount of pages and drawings and notes. And then probably a few more after that, after approved, because we went through a polish stage as well. I would hazard a guess at 20 pages of notes and drawings and sketches after reference. So to answer the question, I probably did reference first. Took thumbnails if I did them from that. And that was kind of the process. All right, what are we saying here? I just monologued for like 5 minutes while looking through a book. Was the line work procedural or could you control it? I think for the most part it was pretty procedural. It was kind of just on the rig. We did have controls though, so both. Holy macaroni. 20 pages. I mean, that's my process of being in dailies more than pre-planning or anything. This is while working on, 12 week, or I don't know how long, 2 months plus of a shot, one shot, focusing on that for 2 months. You're going to have 20 pages of notes because someone's going to give you, and for a shot that's 15 minutes, one day you might get a page of notes on like eye things. So, and then I'll do little doodles and stuff as I'm going. It might not all be notes. It might be remember to have lunch that day. Why would I write a note on that? I would never write that.
He's kind of hemming and hawing. He's unsure. It's like, fine, but keep it small. And you have
15 seconds, sorry.
Think of it like a pendulum. Right?
Not
swings
15
across
minutes.
and then comes to a stop. You've got that really nice residual shake and weight shift in there before he gets stuck into his own world. So he's like, yes, but a little, and there's that indecision in that moment, and you can just feel it by his weight shifts left and right.
Dial it down, something inconspicuous and discreet, like. Dial it down.
And his expressions here, like he's thinking again, something squinty-eyed, and then
Mate, this was the longest shot
hopeful.
ever.
he's so hopeful here. He just wants it to be small.
But not as long as I'm going to milk it for with my, oh no, I'm not looking at the thing. Sorry. Not as long as I'm going to milk it for with streams and behind the scenes and reactions and everything.
All and discreet. Great shapes of the mouth here. So again, I talked about this last time. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here, but watch how they're shaping the mouths. They are not just shaping the mouth based on the phonemes or visemes of the mouth or the
Yes.
syllables, the phonemes that he's saying. They're thinking of the expression and emotion first and then working within there. So instead of just E's being really big,
Thanks, Camila.
Oo's being very small, and just bouncing between each one, it's more of the overall mouth shape for the emotion. So he's disgusted and he's got the mouth curled out here. Then we get that almost like, I don't even know what the right word for the emotion here would be. It's like almost like hope, it's not hopeful yet, but like just slack jawed, almost relaxed. He kind of relaxes a little bit before you go into more of the smile right here, and it's small and inconspicuous. So there's these kind of three main beats: disgust, slack jawed, smiling, and they're hit.
Yeah, pretty fun. Just how he goes into complete happiness at the end. Like, oh, maybe we can do this fun. Like, it's just ridiculous. I love animation. See you later, Aaron. Am I going to do another shot review stream soon? I could do. I'm very busy in the coming weeks, so I just wanted to do this one because it kind of involves no planning or anything. I just kind of show up and react to this or talk about stuff. Bring back old memories in my little book, looking through there. I could do, if people want that, I'm open to it. Or, yeah. The trouble is with those review streams is they're very useful, I think, or I hope, for that one person. And then not really many other people. So you just kind of tend to get a few viewers, and it's just not very good for my ego to not have many viewers. I have no idea how many viewers are watching right now because like to not be distracted by that and count numbers, but hopefully there's at least, well, there is at least Adam watching now, so that's enough for me. But it's more the fact that you don't get like a ton of interaction. It's not very exciting for other people. It's exciting for kind of that one person. So as much as I love doing it, and I think it helps me as well as an animator and an educator of animation. I don't know. Maybe is the answer.
Hitting those, and the mouse and the lip sync is working within those shapes, not just bouncing between super wide, super narrow, and doing anything in between. So when you're doing lip sync and you're doing mouth poses, it's very important to keep the character's emotional state in mind first. The acting, the performance supersedes the rest. If we just focus on the lip sync and matching the mouth to the shapes of, or to the sounds that we hear, you're going to have lip sync, but you're not going to have a performance.
That's right. Get your snarls in.
I like how he just holds here.
Get the nostrils and get the upper lip working. It's magic. And it'll feel much more characterful than just sticking in those lip sync shapes, for sure. Right.
Yeah, we just see those eye darts right there. Such a good facial expression right here. It's just so dead. He's done with it.
We're never gonna make it on that train without them seeing us. We need a distraction.
US four-thumbed and is great at distractions.
But just on the subject of future reviews and stuff, or future streams, if you guys have ideas or you have questions now, feel free to ask. Feel free to put them in the chat, in the comments of the video of this. We also have a Discord. I'm not gonna lie, it's not that active, but I haven't been that active recently. It's something I'd like to do. Like I said, I'm super busy the rest of the month, and it's summer. You know, I don't want to be inside looking at my screen after a day of looking at a screen. But I do plan on being, you know, a bit more active. So if there's things you guys want to see, questions you have, feel free to ask them, and say hello. And if you're new here, welcome.
So good.
Thank you for stopping by.
And those
Subscribe.
hand animations. I'm not sure. I doubt that the rigs would have had IK fingers just because most rigs don't. So
You're right.
trying to get
They
this
didn't.
animation in here and like doing all of this with FK fingers, that is a beautiful level of animation.
There's another animator
That's just
posting in the Impo's Twitch saying, "I wish we had IK fingers." Yeah, I wish we did. I think what I did in the end was I turned the FK fingers into an IK setup using something. Don't know what. Maybe Animbot, maybe some kind of FK IK tool that matched things, or I think it's possible that I had the ends parented to locators and then kind of created like a fake IK chain with the fingers, because I was just struggling so much with the FK. It was just looking terrible. So I think that would have taken another 2 months to polish that up, honestly. It's just very long. So I think I ended up doing an IK pass towards the end, and then I took it and polished it in FK. So making sure like my arcs of like my fingers were pretty good, and just, but it was also very difficult because it's not just something that like you quickly polish. It actually made a big difference to the rhythm of the shot to make sure that those were working very well. So trying to manage 9 different joints on your fingers was a bit of a nightmare, and something that I really kind of needed that fix of turning it into IK temporarily to manage. And it's not something you have on every shot, or even a lot of shots ever in your career, hopefully. I do not wish having to do finger contacts on different and like squidging them together on anyone, unless you have like a finger setup and then you impress all your friends because they think you did it in FK, but actually you just did it in IK and you're a cheat.
such a good attention to detail right in there, getting all the fingers to work well without some of the shots in here without IK fingers, it's like, oh, the stress you guys must have had to go through. It's just like,
Thanks,
just
Bo.
this. It's
I
not
appreciate
much, but
it.
that would take forever.
I appreciate that
Because if you
someone
just look at
noticed.
this finger and this finger, the connection between them is so good. It feels perfect. It doesn't feel like it's sliding or intersecting or like separating. It's so nice. And then like there's so many sword moments and the way they hold the weapons and
And I'll speak to why I turn them back to FK as well. So when you do your IK fingers and they're kind of squidging together, what you actually kind of want to get is like some rotation. I'll just do it with one finger because I can't actually. Oh, my fingers look super weird. You kind of want to, as you're squishing them in, like get some rotation in the tip as well. Which obviously, if you're using IK, they're kind of just translating forward. But then to get that kind of the motion of basically this first knuckle here, that's why I had to turn back to FK and then end up kind of animating them do this and then like counter animate the rest of the joint of the fingers. But obviously it doesn't stand out as a mistake, which was the goal, and you even get someone like Beau who's kind enough to point out that might have been difficult to do and show some appreciation for it. So it was all worthwhile. Locators are definitely your friends, Kier.
the gorilla moments. So many moments that are just like those finger animations would have taken forever. It's beautifully done.
We're never gonna make it on that train without them seeing us. We need a distraction.
Who has four thumbs?
I love the timing. How she comes up here. You have this quick motion here. Let's time this out. So 171 starts here, anticipates down. So our lowest point is 176. 171.
This is interesting.
So 176
Not
is
something
the
I
downwards motion.
generally do, but
Then she comes up here. We'll say to 180, 183. So 171, 170. Did I say 6? Yeah. 176, 183. So that's a down motion. That's the up motion right through here. Then we get a little bit of a hold
we're saying
till
189.
186 and comes back down here 190.
Oh, yeah. One frame off.
Let's see. 186. It's a hold. 190 comes down. And then there's another little bit of a hold right here. 190. Holds for about 2-3 frames. 192, let's say. Comes up and you have this nice.
Okay, so he's not thinking about things in terms of like the peaks of the up or downs. He's thinking about the big spacing, the end of that big spacing, and then a separate amount of time between that and holds, which actually, I guess, when I'm animating is probably more how I'm thinking of it. So makes sense.
Let's see, 196.
And that would just make me even more wrong with my guess
That holds
of
192.
189.
And then back up 196. So the reason I'm
That's
doing
very
this
cool.
is I just want to see how fast the transitions are. So it's like 5 frames down, and then we get the upwards motion. Let me make sure I'm not missing the hold.
So the speed of those transitions, you'll notice, is quite fast, like Beau's counting out here. And I think, again, similar to the holding things very still, this lends into the clarity of animation that I guess I probably didn't learn about on this project, but was just kind of very, what's the term? Sure. Clarity is kind of like keeping things very still and also just moving quickly between those poses so that you're not wasting time but with movement. Like, you don't want to waste time doing that. You want to get in your poses. You want to treat this like a storyboard. You want to read those poses. So motion for the sake of motion is just kind of pointless. You want to snap into your keys, have your holds, and be able to read them. So that's just another point on that clarity point where I was like, oh, Nimona made me realize so much about clarity.
Here. Yeah. Okay, cool.
There he is.
Then the upwards motion here takes 7
Big
frames.
Ches.
5, 7, hold. Then we get 4 frames down, 4 frames up. So you can see the big thing here is that it's not repetitive. We're not just going 4 down, 4 up, 4 down, 4 up. And we're also not holding for the same amount each time. So this is holding for 3, this is holding for 2. And it's not much. It's like the tiniest little bit. But watch it at speed and just pay attention to the timing and the feeling of that bounce right in here. Okay, so
Who has 4 thumbs and is
like it's
great.
that little bit of a hold up, hold at the
Sorry, I had it sped up again. Let's watch it through here, shall we? Yeah, probably has some rhythm to it, I suppose. I do miss animating things on ones. I'm animating on twos right now, and you do tend to. I mean, it can feel at times, and it's something you need to actively avoid, that you're doing things very formulaically, and oh, this is like a twos movement, this is a fours movement, this is sixes. So it's more about breaking things up with like the spacing rather than the timing, which in here you can break things up with the timing a lot more because you can work on ones and threes, whereas on twos you're kind of like twos and fours and sixes. So you need to be a bit more careful with making sure that your spacing has that kind of like difference between other things because you're more limited by the timing. If that makes any sense at all.
bottom there.
I don't
Those
know.
tiny little holds make all the difference, and it just avoids the character feeling like they're just dunk 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 dunk, like a tennis ball just bouncing against the walls or something. So really well done. It's a little thing, but it's just so appealing. And this is where, like, when you're doing your animation, a good solid timing pass and really making sure your timing is super appealing, timing and spacing technically together, it just really makes all the difference. See, we also didn't have any controls on the mustache. Oh, geez. Oh, no. So all of the shapes that you're getting here is all through the lip controls, I'm assuming. So just doing the regular lip sync and then
Yes.
the lip, like any.
We at least had a standard mustache, so you could still shape it, but it was kind of like driving some kind of secondary geometry rather than just instantly posing that geometry. And then I believe they did do cloth on top of that, so it's not necessarily one-to-one with what we had in viewport, but I think overall it was close enough. So I think what we had was like a very straight line on his mustache. And there's times when it's broken up and you're like, I don't think I remember animating that or like showing that much lip or something like that. But overall, I think it translated pretty well. Aside from having like
Any shot
just a pure fluffy mustache in viewport, which would have just slowed things down.
where his mustache
Thanks,
is
Adam.
overlapping his mouth
Appreciate
here,
it.
it's all just like all directed in blend shapes. Oh, geez, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, Chester, you're asking about CFX. There's CFX, yes. On the clothes and hair. I think that's kind of it. I mean, it had to be on the clothes, so this was difficult with Ballister's cape for sure. But what I did for that, I think I just had his cloak be completely, not completely, but be like 70% translucent. So you could see through it and see what his shoulders and body were doing, so that when they then did the CFX on the cape and the hood, that would drive properly and make sure that the physics of all that wouldn't come back to give me where I just hidden it under a cloak and just assume that they would, if you're driving CFX, you need to make sure that you're animating the underlying mechanics of things like shoulders, and there's like a plate which was like he has armor which also needed to be animated and was its own kind of nightmare. But yeah.
You did a
Hey,
really
Forza, how are
good
you?
job. Because that's just the shapes in those mustaches are so appealing, but I can imagine the nightmare, the pain, the suffering. Oh, that would be like even just here, like that nice little bit of the mustache getting pushed up. It's such a nice little detail. We could add anything on top of it as animators. Ooh, oh, that's so a lot of just manual shaping, like right through here, just to get that nice visual contrast right there. Wow, that's
Yeah, a lot of manual shaping, but also the rigs were really great. There were things that weren't great, like I say, the shoulders had their own issues, and the fact that this mustache is a little bit broken up. Like you see here, how this tash is kind of a little bit jaggedy. You can kind of see these little holes appearing through it, and in this line, it's kind of a lot like that. I believe in Maya, we would have just had a straight line, pretty much, all the way, you know. So it's not 100% controlled by us. There's kind of a lovely
That's a lot of dedication
teamwork
to
going
get a
on
lot
here,
of extra appeal in there. That's awesome. And also awesome for us as the audience, painful for the animators. So well done.
What's up, Animation Addict?
Okay, so we talked a lot about this shot here. Honestly, there's a few other things we could talk about, but let's see, what time is it? Okay, technically, I've got 10 minutes before I was supposed to go because I do have a lot of work, but I do want to point out a couple of other shots and just kind of point out some cool things in a few other shots. So let's see, I'm just trying to think. Let's play through this one more time, just in case I'm missing anything, and then we'll jump to a second shot here. And actually, make sure I am playing through the whole thing right there.
We're never gonna make it on that train without them seeing us. We need a distraction.
Who has four thumbs and is great at distractions?
Fine, but dial it down. Something inconspicuous and discreet, like.
His eye darts are so good here. If anyone wants to do a master study of eye darts, like take this scene. It's such a good shot for eye darts.
Or okay animator study. Don't know about master, but appreciate the kind words all the same, Beau.
And yeah, if I ever actually manage to end a stream on time, you can tell it's not me. There's no way I'd do anything on time. It's terrible. So let's take a look at two more shots. One, which
All
was
right.
on my list to take a look at.
Let's have a look at some other ones,
hey,
shall
we
we?
actually have the person who animated it here, so might as well take a look at it. Is this shot right here? So let me play it a couple of times for everyone.
Oh, are these your next targets? Who do you want to kill first?
Who do you want to kill first?
Are these your next targets? Who do you want to kill first?
Awesome. If I may ask, can you speak to that 3/4 second animating on week, and is there any window for speeding up the process? I'm assuming you mean like talking about how we're animating 3 or 4 seconds on Nimona. And if you can speed that up, or if that's just the fastest you can go, and you can definitely speed that up for sure. Definitely animated 30 seconds plus regularly, almost every week in TV, 30 seconds plus. So this is definitely an exception. Well, feature film is an exception to something like TV or games or other things. But even taking 2 months on a shot for me, just, yeah, like right now it's nice to go through and say, oh yeah, this was nice and I loved working on this, and I'm happy with how it came out. But I honestly wouldn't say I loved working on it. It was a real pain in the backside for sure. There were a lot of notes. It went through a lot of changes, and I could not wait to be done with this shot. But I'm also glad that I spent time on polishing it up, and I'm really thankful for being given this shot by Ted, the animation director of Nimona. Because I feel like I learned a ton on it. I learned a ton about clarity. I feel like I evolved as an animator from someone who would do a lot of overacting and not so subtle stuff to having to do that and really kind of like taking polish to another level for me anyway. So I wouldn't even say that I necessarily enjoyed working on the shot, but I enjoy now looking back at it, and I enjoy that Beau was kind enough to review the shot and look at it, and now that we can react to his review, and then who knows? Maybe Beau will watch this and react to this reaction of the reaction, and then I can react to that, and we can have a reaction of the reaction to the reaction. And it'll be great, and we'll just keep going forever. And then Chester Sampson can get involved, and he can do a reaction to the reaction, and it'll be great. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any more questions, and we'll wrap up pretty soon because this is, I don't usually go nearly 2 hours. This is a once in a lifetime thing. But I've enjoyed this, I'm really thankful to Beau for having reviewed that. I've never looked at someone reviewing my work that they've seen in a film or something like that. Only kind of weird, what are they called? Fanfics of Number Blocks and Gojaz and Digby the Dragon characters from my TV days, which are just very strange and not something that would be allowed on stream unless it was different kind of stream.
It's so good. This is one of those shots where it's a
This
total
is so
of
good.
71 frames.
I love
Not very
this.
long. And
I love the film. If you haven't seen Nimona as well, you gotta go see Nimona.
Compared to the
It's a great
entire
film.
film.
Shout out Nimona.
But in 71 frames, the amount of character and appeal in here is just beautiful. And the eyelashes are not smooth in the final render. That's interesting. Yeah, you can actually see it right there. You can see the nickeling. So for anyone who doesn't know nickeling,
That's
I don't know
funny.
if it's a common term nowadays, but it's essentially a term to...
I just want to see what the other shot is as well.
Right there.
Oh, it had
There
to
we
be
go.
the shot.
You're just leading the audience's eye from one shape into the next. So thinking of this form that's kind of tapering
This shot is
down
insane.
into this form here.
I mean, just
So it's
beautiful.
just leading the eye from one shape to
I
the
love
next, and then
everything about this shot, and this
beautifully
is,
senior
I think
frames,
this
right?
is longer than
And a
15
few
seconds to be
particles.
honest. But
Now, as the
what a
character goes
beast.
through here, we get this nice length.
I'm forgetting the name of the original Blue Sky animator who posted this on LinkedIn literally a couple of days ago that they animated this shot. Damn, it's a next level beautiful shot here. Will this stream be recorded? Yes, it'll just be on my channel. There'll be a VOD. You can catch it there. Camilo watching it today for sure. Nice. Did Ted T interview me for the job? Yeah, he did. Can't imagine working on a shot for months on end. Working in games, it's almost the opposite. Yeah, I mean, I didn't work on a shot for months on end until... Was it Nimona? I mean, when I was working in games, I actually was the first time I did work on shots for over a month. But before that, I was very much TV, 30 seconds a week, hour, a minute and a half in 3 weeks, that kind of schedule. But yeah, it's nice. It's definitely something that if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't want to just animate one shot every few months, then I would say it will improve the work that you do fast. It won't necessarily make you a slower animator because you're working to such a leisurely deadline, at least compared to what you're working on in TV. But the amount of notes that you'll get and the improvement that you'll see in your animation and just the level of detail and polish that it gives your shots, which then go on your showreel and open up new opportunities for you. It's just, I mean, I worked on that shot for 2 months, but that 2 months was probably better spent than me working on 4 minutes of TV animation for my career, I mean, it definitely was, I can put that shot on I was talking to Chester earlier and we said that's a lifetime reel shot, that's one that you can stick on and not have to replace. When you first start in an animation or you're, just in TV and you're trying to break into feature, like I was for so many years, you're definitely updating your reel a lot and you're trying not to but you almost don't want to admit to feature companies that you worked in TV, and because they look at that and they say, oh well, you're just a TV animator, and it's not the case. You're an animator and you can animate, but yeah, it's a tough one going from TV into feature. And now I'm definitely rambling, so if anyone has any final questions, ask them now. If not, I'm gonna wrap this up and say, if you haven't seen Nimona, go and see Nimona. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And definitely go and check out the Pratt Bros channel. And thank you very much to Beau for doing this analysis of my shot. I feel super honored, and it's great. I loved it. New video when? Who knows? Let me know if you want a new video. Join the Discord as well. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate you guys, and appreciate the comments in the chat, the questions. It kept the stream going, and just thanks very much. Really appreciate everything. Just everything. I love it. Cheers.